rather than a new concept, I'm just bringing all the concepts together and showing you how we approach people and get them to cash flow positive. To commercialize, it's not a big event. It's actually a series of little events. So what we're going to talk about today is the micro to macro, and the fact that all that is about is momentum. So, and I'm going to show you how we talk to inventors, and I qualify them from these 10 points that I'm going to share with you today with 10 different case studies. I'm going to show you that most people I talk to, inventors, have 3 or less of these, and what I do is I take them to 7 or more, and that's when they can get cash flow. So these are quite unique things. You may not have even considered them in what you do. So hopefully we can get you into this quite well. Okay, so I'm good to go. If everyone else is, we'll just leave it a minute or so. So if you like, just in the chat box, if you let me know where you are in the world, just your city, that'll be fine. So just type it in. I can put in mine. I'm in Perth, in Western Australia. Notice I've got another member here from Western Australia. Hi, Roman. Plenty of others. So, yep. I'm not seeing any comments. Oh, Scotland. Okay. Nice place to be from this time of year. I don't know whether you guys have had the blizzards that they're getting in the US, or whether you actually get those, but they have 5 feet of snow in Colorado in the last 48 hours. Imagine what that'll do to your driveway. So I'm hoping you don't get that sort of blizzard stuff, although Scotland doesn't have as much. It has got good mountains, so you would get some snow, but yeah, we don't see snow, of course. I have seen snow, but I had to travel to see it. You don't see it in my state. My state is 25 million square kilometres and 25 million people. So, it's 2.5 million people, but we don't get snow, so we're pretty isolated. Okay, well, I'm good to go if we all are. So I want to make sure you can all hear me. You should be able to hear my volume now. If you can't hear me, you need to perhaps type. It's impossible if you can't, but let's jump into this. I'm going to share my screen. You should be able to see my first slide now, which is why only 5% of investors break through. If you can see that okay, then we're good to go. I'm just going to try and now come back in here and for my I'm not sure if you can see my can you see my yeah, okay. I'm just worried because I may have to take it off because for some reason I can't see my own note screens, which I like to carry. So I'll just, if I can stop the sharing for a second and then start it again. Apologies for that. That should give you pretty much what I want, which is you have what you want and I've got my notes. I'm just trying to cover off my notes here to make sure. Yes, I have. Okay, so hopefully you can see that screen with a bunch of ladders. So if that's the case, then we can get started. I want to just go through firstly to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, some of you I know have been on calls before. My name is Daniel O'Connor. I've been working with Inventors now for 43 years, as of last week, 44 years. I started in my own invention in the 1980s, and I've been working ever since with universities, corporate, and now with Inventors. So my first invention was a telephone accounting system. We were the ones that when you, in the 80s, you checked into a hotel and you got to report all the phone calls you made. That was my software. I didn't develop it, I commercialized it. And so we did that on behalf of a university, and we spanned it out and ran it ourselves and went to a second board listing in Australia. My last innovation was the cornerstone investor model. I got very frustrated with having individual inventors and small R&D teams not being able to get funding because they couldn't rely on funding if they didn't have cash flow. And so what I did is I flipped the model and made it available to people who didn't have cash flow yet, had a good project, and could get cash flow. They could get funding. We look for modest funding, but I'm going to show you all of that today. So this is all about that breakthrough. I want to get everyone here enough of ammunition for you that if you're in the 95%, you can get to the 5%. And it's really, the change is not too radical. It's just a matter of adopting these 10 principles. So we're going to talk about something that most inventors never really get exposed to. It's not the ideas, it's not the motivation. We're going to talk about momentum. And because one of the biggest problems I see is that most inventors don't actually know what momentum looks like in their projects. They don't know. They're always working hard. They know that they're progressing technically, but commercially, nothing seems to be working for them. So, and I want to change that if I can. So stay with me to the end, because I'll show you how, at the end, how you can qualify your project and see whether or not you can apply all of this stuff and move forward. So let's jump into this. Firstly, in order to touch on it, I need to explain to you what this is and what it isn't. So I want to get you 5%, and it's about commercial behavior with sequencing. Now that delivers momentum, and as I mentioned, that's going to be the core of this today. Understanding what to do and when to do it, and most importantly, understanding what momentum actually looks like. Because if you don't know what momentum looks like, you can't really create it, whether you like it or not. Now, I'm going to give you the 10 points that I use. Or first off, I'll go through where we get our skills from. It's pretty easy. We start out with our R&D, and we work pretty hard on that. And that's a skill set that we get from, we already have. We bring it in. We generally are specialists in this area. And then once we get to a certain point, we now want to commercialize it. The first thing we look at is patenting. Now, we don't try and do that ourselves. We tend to go and get professionals to help, and that's a smart move to do. But if we think that we've got a product and a patent that now can be commercialized, we may be right, but we may be wrong. And if we just expect the patent to sell itself, it's not an asset. So what happens is it drops into that 95% and you lose everything. It may take you years. I've had one client who came into our program. He had 22 years of not being able to get his product off the ground. It was a very good product. And as a result, we rebuilt it a different way, and it appealed to the market. He got his traction and off he went. So that's quite a significant software project, by the way. Now, once you've got the patent and protection in, if you're smart enough, you realize you have to layer another set of skills on top of that, and that's the commercialization. Now, some people would outsource that, and I would suggest to you, you shouldn't outsource it. You should actually do it yourself. If you do this yourself, you're going to own the process for this project, but for any other project in the future. And that's what I do. I tend to work with cohorts or groups of 6 different inventors at a time, and we've got several different cohorts working around the world now. And we work for 6 months with them to get them the commercialization skills, and then their first, and then any other significant cash generating transactions, so we can evolve over 6 months. So that's an important aspect of this. Now, if you do just build a commercialization model and hope for the best, it's probably not going to work. You're going to end up dropping into that 95% anyway. But if you do it right, that's where you're going to get traction, and off you go. So where do we get our skills from? Well, generally, we start with our vocational skills. So if you might be the best scientist, you might be the best engineer, it doesn't matter if you can't articulate it into these commercialization skills later on. You would always look to outsourcing patents but you don't need to outsource protection, because you could do non-disclosure agreements, waiver of rights, non-compete agreements. All of this can all come into the project to protect you up until when you apply for patents. So if you're doing that, you can outsource the patent itself. But by that time, hopefully, as long as you've delayed this until you needed it, absolutely needed it, you're in a situation where you can have the project pay for it, not you. So, but commercialization is where we get a bit lackadaisical. We tend to say, well, okay, let's just wing it. let's see whether or not we can take this and just bumble our way through, because we might be able to get this done, we might not. And generally that might end us into oblivion, which will drop us into the 95%, but it doesn't need to stay there if you build these commercialization skills. But I can tell you that's where most projects stall around here. Not because inventors aren't capable, it's because they're operating without a commercial roadmap. When you don't have a roadmap, momentum won't happen for you. So it's just as simple as that. So what I want to do is show you the key points of how the 10 key points that make the 5%ers and not the 95%. And I'm going to give you a list here, which is my heaviest slide, which I should have apologized for. But at the end of this, I'm not going to go through and explain it. I'm going to actually give you case studies, one after the other, for 10 case studies, which will explain each of these points. So if I'm a little bit hasty on this, don't worry too much about it. So the all-important thing is, this is about the top 10 things that turn inventors into the successful 5%ers. Now, generally, when I go out and talk to inventors who are coming into my programs, I look for them, the ones that have 3 or less of this, and the ability for me is to see whether or not I can get them to 7 or more. And I know 7 or more, I'm going to get them cash flow. So they can focus on just these things, and their project will get traction, and they'll start earning money, which is important. That's where your risk goes down and your opportunities go up. So what are they? First things first, they are prepared to identify what is missing in their own skill set. If they're going out there and they're getting outsourcing for patents, that's smart. They're not patent attorneys unless they are. Most of them are not. And they need to understand that they can outsource that, but they can also outsource skills that they don't have. But if they do that, they'll never own those skills. So what we do is we get them, the people who accept that they can't readily outsource this like they can with patenting, because you give this to someone like Deloitte, you're going to be up for an $80,000, $100,000 bill with no guarantees it's ever going to get done. So what you need to do is actually own this process so you can do it on the cheap, because once you own the process for your current project, you'll actually embed their learning to a point where you can use it for any other project. You'll never need to outsource it again. The third reason is they understand they need to build a commercial model first. A commercial model is not about what it looks like. A commercial model is where the value is, by the way. Most inventors think their value is in their project. It's actually not. It's in the commercial model you wrap around that project. And you can have great products with bad commercial models, they won't make money. And vice versa, of course, can make money. Now, if I explain that to you, the commercial model is how you're going to make money from the people you're going to partner with. It's how they are going to make money from partnering with you. It's how the people who buy the product all the way down to retail will make money from their decision to buy it. And finally, it's how the users will get a benefit. It might be time and it might be money. So the all-important thing, we need to not only calculate what that is, we monetize it, and then we can articulate it to the parties that we're going to joint venture with or collaborate with. Next, most of these 5%ers stop chasing VCs and they stop trying to round up wealthy investors. I remember about 20 years ago, we had a very successful inventor from California who came to Australia. He toured the capital cities of Australia talking about how you should do your commercialization. And I went along and I was absolutely shocked, because he was saying you might have to do 300 presentations before you get the right people in your project, but just keep going. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I thought, no, we do maximum of 4 presentations to get our funding. And the reason why, we rifle shoot the people we want. They're partners. They're in the industry or the market. They know the industry. They know the market. They know what they want. They can see value for them. So we forget the VCs. We forget wealthy investors. Wealthy investors have plenty of other options, including buying listed shares, because they can dump those in half a second simply by speed dialing their broker and say, dump those shares. Boom, they're out of that business and they've got their money for it. So they can't do that with you, because you would be probably 18 months to 5 years before they can realize what you've got with them. So that becomes a major problem for them. VCs, by mandate, the legislation for venture capital and private equity funds to formulate venture capital means that they can't invest in something that doesn't have cash flow. And if you haven't got cash flow, high growth in the industry, the industry silo they're looking at, and also you're open to a deal and you're negotiable, then those four things, they won't talk to you. They'll encourage you, but they won't do any business with you. All they'll be doing is saying, come back in 3 years. Okay, next, those 5%ers accept the big slice of a little pie concept. And I'm going to explain that with an analogy later on, so I won't go into it right now. But you understand that when we say give away 50% of your project, it sounds very daunting, but it's usually 50% on a geographic, on demographic, over time. So people might get 50% of the rights to their project in their town, city, state, province, country, doesn't matter, but they don't get the whole lot. And I'm going to show you good examples of that, particularly a UK case here. But these 5%ers implement a structured partnering process. They want to get from top 10 list down to 4, and they present one at a time of those 4 till they get their funding. And they generally will get it in the first one. In fact, one of these today, I'm going to show you, did 2 presentations and got 3 deals. So go figure. It can happen quite often. Another one I've got in a case study, in my first case study off, he actually hadn't got to presentations yet, but he had already got funding from somebody within his cohort. One of the other inventors said, can I invest in your project? They did a deal on the spot. So he's still in the project, both of them are. Next, the 5%ers calculate the leverages that they're going to offer to those collaborative partnerships. So they know that these people aren't in it for money. They're in it for their benefits for their business. And they want to make sure that they can get everything loaded onto for their own benefit, that it doesn't cost you any money. So what we try and do is give them limited exclusivities along the way so they can actually get a sustainable competitive advantage over their own industry. And that's always good. Those leverages don't cost you money, but it does give them a big benefit. That's what it's all about. From there, these 5%ers limit their request for cash, and they limit it for cash flow. So they're not trying to raise $5 to $8 million to be profitable, or pounds. They're actually just asking for $500,000 to get them to cash flow positive. They would use that money to build out what they need to get to their first significant cash generating transaction, and then use that money to go to the next one. And they keep progressing like that. If you do 5, 6, 10, doesn't matter how many, but it does depend on how much in terms of turnover you get for your industry. Once you've done a series of these, the VCs will be knocking on your door saying, hey, if I put 10% or 10 times the equity into your project, can I get 100 times the output? I think I can. So let's share that. And of course, that's something you'll end up doing. And that's where VCs come in. They're much further down the track. Now, also those 5%ers put a value on access to plant, equipment, resources. So if you're looking for $500,000, let's say, and you're going to use that money for facilities and equipment and skills, why should you go and hire skills and buy equipment and rent of facilities when you can actually find a partner who has all of that and they can offset that, so they're not taking risks in cash? And I'll show you an example of that today. And finally, they pitch their first partnership deal. They focused on one, and then once they've got that, they're planning the next. So they never go after more than one. What we do, one of the disciplines of innovation and using our program, is we make sure that you pick only one project and you only go after one significant cash generating transaction at a time. And once we bed that down, we go for the next one. So our 4 major significant cash generating transactions are a modest cap raise, a distribution agreement, a license agreement, or a trade sale. Anything else, we're probably outside of the scope of it. Although some of these we got creative here, and I'm going to share that with you today. So just before we get started, before we jump into the case studies, I want a quick question for you. It's just a yes or no answer. Drop it in the chat box and I'll have a look at that. The question I've got for you is, how many of you feel you've been working on your project longer than you expected to? Just a yes or no. Now, I can tell you that's quite normal, but it tells us something important. There's up to these 10 reasons are a good start as to why that's happening. And these 10 case studies might give you some insight into what you can do differently to make your project happen. So hopefully everyone looks like saying yes. So I'm going to jump straight into this now and cover off the case studies. So the first one up is John. Dr. John Thorne is actually based in Wyoming. His office is in Wyoming. He's over the border in, I think, might be Colorado, but somewhere like that. Very snowed-in country, very isolated, and he works from home. But he's a clinical psychologist. He's in his 80s, mid-80s, by the way. And John can't get to clients or patients, and patients can't get to John. So it becomes a problem. So he has he wanted to get a remote treatment for what he does, which is he treats people with PTSD, and he uses a process called EMDR, which is a certified way to treat PTSD patients, and they recognise that about 4 to 6 visits of this process over 3 months can cure somebody of it, or at least get it well and truly under control. So he was always going to have, because he's so remote and he's work from home and his patients are remote, because a lot of these PTSD are first responders, they're ex-military, they're people who've been through major trauma, and they tend to withdraw from society and don't particularly want to go and sit in a waiting room with 1,000 other patients or a dozen other patients. So they want to see if they could do this online. And it's never been done before until John decided to solve that problem. And he built this headset, which he can then treat people over Zoom. So attraction was always going to be a problem for John. So what he did is he alleviated that with a technical advisory panel. He set up a panel and he brought all these practitioners in from all over the world. They're a very close-knit group. There's probably 100,000 practitioners in EMDR, and they all use the same technique that he uses, which is a row of lights on the wall and some hand buzzers which people hold, and then he gives them exercises to do while he's talking to them, and he can identify pinpoint problems and work through them while they're on doing this. But with this, it's a one-way glass at the front, which he can see them from his camera on Zoom, but they can't see him. And he's following their eyes, and he can do exactly what he would do if they were in front of him in a clinic. So he's able to get good traction on this. And what he did is he pulled in, all he wanted was 100 people on his technical advisory panel who were all practitioners, clinically qualified, and they would then need to buy 10 of these to send out to 10 patients, and they would run the trial. And the trial would, we knew they're not doing anything different, so they don't need FDA approval in the US or any other approval. It would immediately be able to be recognised. But the difference is they would be able to validate their own findings. So, and there's plenty of people that would do this, because when the headset is actually purchased by the patient, and then after 3 months, they can return it and get a rebate based on the condition they send it back in. So it really doesn't cost them that much. What John did was, and as it was, as he was compiling the investors, which were the technical advisory panel members, practitioners, they were putting in and crowdsourcing their 10 units, putting up the money ready for John to go to build molds. One of the cohort members in his group of 6 inventors that he's been with for probably 3 or 4 or 5 months, had finished his project, put his hand up and said, "John, can I invest in your project?" He did that deal, and that funded the project for the plastic injection molding, and off John went. He didn't have to wait for the technical advisory panel money to go into an escrow to pay for that. So all pretty easy. So he created trials, they led to partnerships, forward orders, created the demand, also the funding. So for him, momentum was not about geography. That's important. Okay, so this is now having a structured process to do this. So this is a project completely opposite in terms of age. John is 85. This guy is 25. His name's Chris. Chris works in a remote mine, servicing haul pack trucks, the big vehicles. You know, they might be up to 400 tons. And he services air conditioners on those trucks, which is a common thing for in Australian environment or any hot environment. And he needs to have somebody operating under the at the engine, and he needs somebody else in the cab operating up there. So what Chris did is he built an app, and then he built a program based on his app in his phone. He built two separate manifolds which would connect to the input and output on the vehicle air conditioning unit, and he could then use Bluetooth. They've got built-in Bluetooth feeders that go to the app, and he could sit in the cab, one person. So he's cut his labour rate from 2 people per 2 man-hours per hour down to 1 man-hour per hour, and at the end of it, there's about 20 minutes needed to do reports, to do invoicing and everything else. This automatically does it. So he spends no time on invoicing. So it's pretty easy. All he needs to do is scan the barcode on each of the vehicles inside the cab where they've got air conditioning service, and he's on to theirs. He's got all their data in front of him. He does the service and he delivers it. So all he had to do really was show people the commercial model, which was 1 man-hour per hour, no 20 minutes of service, and he was up and running. So in order to do that, what we did was package it up. Now, the way we did this was quite unique because John had the app. Oh, sorry, Chris, he had the app. He also had the Bluetooth stuff and everything else, and he built it into a printed circuit board, a very tiny little, about the size of a flat matchbox. And what he did was he wanted to do a license because not only is he early 20s or mid 20s now, but he's got twin girls, 1 year old, and he works on the mines away. So he's away for 2 weeks out of 3. So his life is hectic. He does not want to build these and sell them. What he wanted to do was to license it. But he designed and developed the printed circuit board, and he already had that. So what we did is we bundled the printed circuit board with all the app programs and the app itself, which is online and already available, which he designed and posted. But he also then added the royalty to that, and he sells that. So just because his deals are done, I can say that Chris did this. $66 buys the printed circuit board and all the rights to make these, and they sell for $1,995. So all pretty easy. It cost them about between $400 and $600 to make. There was enough margins in all the levels. He'd already done his pricing, costing, and sourcing. He knew exactly where he was with that, and we knew that going to get licensees was going to be pretty easy. So he focused on Australia, then USA, and now we're going to go for the rest of the world. So pretty easy, all patented. And again, he didn't pay for the patents. We did the first deal that paid for patents. He was able to open up to more countries. So easy for him. And he's got the business. I've got a sample here somewhere, but I won't bother about it now. But a good little operation, very tidy, and no input from him after this. The next one is the role of the commercial model. You need to understand the commercial model is going to carry you, and also starting micro to macro is going to be how you contain your risk. Now, the next inventor, this project's actually in Indonesia, but this inventor is an Australian living in Indonesia, and he's a ship's captain, but he's also does QA for a complete fleet of vessels. And he understands that every item on a ship, and there's 6,000 working items on any vessel, and that vessel might be a ship, it might be a tug, it might be a barge, and it might be a rig. All of them are vessels. They all have a captain, and they all have QA on every little component. So that means that every bit of paperwork for every little component for those 6,000 parts, assets, has got to be in a library, and that's got to be on board the vessel. So it means that if you're going to use, let's say, a lifting wire or rope, and that might be $2 million worth of rope there, a configuration, and there might be 6 different parts, including all the shackles and everything else that he's got to check off before he can use it to make sure it's serviceable. So what he did is he embedded everything on those ships with RFID codes, and they were very low frequency all the way up to very high frequency, UHF, ultra high frequency. So whether it was near water or steel, or whether it was in the open, it didn't matter. He could still get a reading off it and he designed and developed a gun which had a different types of readers within the gun. handgun, and he just pointed at the thing, and it would come up on his iPad, and he could then cross it off. He could get red, amber, green, and that tells him whether or not this whole all the series of parts that he's going to be using are usable, and he could get to it without going into the library and checking each day. So it got him back an hour's worth of travel from where he's going to work on the deck to the library and back again, back and forward, and also he's got it's all done in minutes and updated in minutes. So it's not updated to an international database. That happens when the ship pulls in, but it's on that vessel at any particular time. So on the daily basis, it's exactly the same. It just saves him time. So he wanted to get the oil and gas and maritime industries, which are a really, really big ask. So what we did is it's very hard to break into oil and gas. So we went micro. He found a niche partner, and which was ropes and lifting. And we peeled off that as a small subset. We did our proof of concept. Once we've proven that technology, they become paying customers, and then we expanded it out. We gave them a limited exclusivity to let them help their clients save money, and then we built it out from there. Expansion was easy because we got the right partner who was an international or global, engineering consulting firm who already had arms and legs into the maritime and the oil and gas industry. So, and they are a client of mine anyway, so we're able to just pair them up. So expansion became easy, became an industry standard, and now we're looking to appoint that global engineering firm to run this. Now, going forward, he's not going to be playing a big role in this. He'll be on the board, but he's going to vend in 2 stages, vend his entire operation into this international company, which is a public listed company, for shares in their company. So he'll still be a major shareholder in this little thing, becomes a minor shareholder in the big company, and he'll play a minor role in the technical advisory panel and maybe a directorship. So that's his pathway to becoming the 5%er. Okay, let's keep going. Now, we know already that VCs can't invest, and most investors won't invest in anything that doesn't have cash flow. So this is one of the big misconceptions, funding. Inventors believe funding creates momentum, but the reality is different. Momentum attracts funding. So this is a pretty cool product. It's basically tools that float. So if you're working over water and you drop your tools, you're going to have to go and buy new tools. But more importantly, if they float, you can actually just retrieve it, pull it back in and keep working. Now, that's more important than just the cost of the tool. It is really, if you're away from shore and this happens when you're working on an outboard engine or something, that could be the difference of days of survival because you can't get the engine running. So these guys develop this. People pay a little bit extra. It's a really cool product. What we had to do, the project objective was to crowdsource one big order first, and then we offer limited exclusivity on the geographic, on demographic segmentation. That was pretty easy. And then these guys wanted to be the distributors in North America and their license in other countries. So we were able to accommodate that model and still get them both the steel forging molds and the plastic injection molds that they needed for all of these products, including a toolkit or toolbox that actually floats as well. So the one order finances the tooling. That changes everything for the inventors. Ultimately, the most important thing for them was they can run this project themselves and they'll own 100% of the shares in that project. So that gives you an idea of what you can do if you're smart about it. Now, it wasn't a big deal. These guys are 6 weeks into their program already. They have the major account lined up. They've already done a trade show and got all the leads they want. They've got all the appointments set in their books. They're going to be happening this week, or next week, sorry. And then they're going to be involving me in the pitch for the first one, and I'll explain that later on. Okay, so the next one is all about sharing a bigger slice of a smaller pie. Now, sometimes you need funding, and that means you've got to give away something. And people don't want 3% of something. We hear about that with venture capitalists. It doesn't happen. You don't want to give anyone 51% of something, but what you do want to give away is a big slice of a smaller pie. Now, this is Aaron. Aaron had a project which is a 30-second hole fix for gyprock walls. basically, if you've got a hole in the wall, you push this through, pull a piece of wire in there, and it spreads out that web there and locks the suction cap on the opposite wall. Once that's done and it's locked in firm, you take your spack filler and smooth it over. And it's a completely flat finish, no convex to be able to, some people put tape on the walls and then put over that, and they have to have a convex, which will show up really badly. But this is dead flat. And all you do is, in a case where you're doing it for someone else, you just give them the wet and dry or the 2 types of sandpaper and say, wait 24 hours, sand it back, paint it, done. So, and what he wanted to do was he actually jumped the gun a little bit. He took his patent to the US and he talked to a company called Lowe's, which is a very big hardware store group, and they gave him what's called a gold ticket. Essentially, they said, we will guarantee we'll take your product to our stores. But we're not going to take it direct because you're too small. You're only one product. Go find a distributor. So he came to us. We set all that up for him. But in order to fund that, his major problem was a paradox. He actually got into pretty much all the 4 major chains in the US. 3 of them represent 20,900 stores across America in big box and small box retailers in hardware. So in order to do that, each one's going to need an inventory of a couple of dozen. These sell for $20 each. And they cost him $2.17, by the way. So that's the sort of margin that we're able to work on. And as a result, he needed a lot of money to pay for this inventory, even if he's going to stage roll it out. So what we did is we went back and we took his entire operation back to a small opportunity in New Zealand for a franchise called Fix a Hole, where it would be sold as an ancillary franchise. There's only going to be 8 franchises for the whole of New Zealand. They would be owned by people like plumbers and the likes who were already servicing homes. Some were maintenance companies fixing partitions in offices and the likes. And the whole idea here was Aaron would sell this master franchise and use the cash for that to fund his production runs. And as these guys started buying more product, he was able to turn it into even more product into the US and get the stock into all the stores. So that's still happening. It's an ongoing thing. But he gave away 50% of the New Zealand franchise. He kept the Australian franchise as an option, and then he sold registered the product ranged it into hardware, big box retailers in the US. So we use micro to macro, big slice of a small pie, and then he capitalized on that using that money. So that's what we mean by a bigger slice of a smaller pie. By the way, most of these projects invoke more than 7 of these different things in each of their offers. So don't be surprised if they overlap. That's the way it is. I'm trying to get them to 10 out of 10. Here's an interesting project that's going through now. It's a 2025 project. It's still going. It's still growing. Now, the whole idea of this is structured partnerships can reduce your risk, and it creates the confidence, and the confidence can create the decisions you need to get this done. Now, what this guy did is he reinvented the way security respond to night calls in commercial operations, because believe it or not, police won't call out. If you get a break-in and you own a business and there's no one there, the police will not come out. They'll just say, well, let me know in the morning. If it has been broken into and there's damage, we'll send somebody out to look at it, but nobody's going to come out at night. So he had to do his 10-4-1 process to get him to a point where he could know exactly who was going to be in his commercial model. And you looked at layers and players. The layers were, for instance, the top layer was the police department. The next layer down were the monitoring units, and he wanted only one of those. So there was about 6 in the city he was going at, and he wanted to then get one for each of the cities or states he was going to venture into. And then below that, there were thousands and thousands of security guards who were employees at an hourly rate for these big companies. But what he offered them was, why do you work for those guys for so much an hour getting paid at the end of the month when you can come and buy your own car like you do in Uber and come and work for this operation and get paid every night. So after you've responded to a call, you fill out a form like Uber does, and it automatically, the monitoring station clips the ticket from the homeowner or the business owner and then sends out the money straight away into your credit. So really, it became a Uber type model for user pays, attendance fee only. There was a little bit of a monthly fee to keep attendance and also to keep these guys up to date, because this system makes sure that their currency is up to date as well. So the guys signed on directly, they bought their own cars, and as a result of that, they were able to make more money. They get paid per job, same day. You can imagine if a guy goes out at 10 o'clock at night and sits in an industrial area, turns his little machine on, like Uber, and he's right in the middle of it all. And if there's any break-in, he's going to get the call. There's his $250 for the day, for the night, the first call, and off he goes. He could get that maybe 4, 5, 6 times a night. I don't know. It all depends. The all-important thing is the police are getting an oversight onto how this all works. They can tap it at any time and look at it. And most importantly, they get a report copy. They can download those and they go into their system so they can close out every job that's been reported without any response. They don't have to send a response, which saves them a lot of money. Now, so you can appreciate that in order to do that, we just had to put it all into place. I can tell you, when he signed the police department in his state, they went and helped him sign up the other police departments. So he got them all, and they paid a lot of money for this to get oversight onto this and to endorse it. So as a result of that, they actively participate, and he pretty much landed all the police departments in this case, it was Australia. And of course, he'll own everything about it. He'll own 50% of each of the operations, and the monitoring centres will buy 50% and then implement it so all of their guards will go into this model, and they'll pinch the guards from everyone else, and they'll own the industry because they'll be cheaper to work for. So you can see how well that works. Again, his commercial model gave him the 10-4-1 process. He was able to identify who it is he wanted and then just blast it out from there. Now, the role of leverages. I talk about leverages, which are benefits that go to the prospective partner that you're looking at that don't cost you as an inventor anything on your project. So this one was a UK-based product. If I just run through it with you, it's a natural formulation that kills all pathogens on contact. It's great for treatment of carcasses before you ship to different markets. It stops the growth cycle for any pathogens, which means, and pathogens, if you're a scientist, you understand they colonize. They don't just grow 1 or 2 at a time, but they exponentially grow. Thousands to millions to billions. They just keep growing day by day by day, hour by hour. But if you can treat the carcasses early and then you kill off most of the pathogens, and what this guy was doing was putting them all into, loading up a refrigerated 40-foot container, and then he was putting in vaporizing this stuff to under 5 microns. This formulation would then hang in the air as a vapor. He would close the doors, and that would treat it right there, and he gets probably 2 to 3 times the amount of time in there before the stock would be rendered unusable. So he was able to stop the growth cycle for the abattoirs. That made the transporting last longer, and most importantly, they could increase the market penetration, the market potential they could look at, because they could go abroad. For those of you in UK, understand that that's no longer part of EU. If they line those container trucks up, refrigerated container trucks, after they go through the tunnel, and they have to get approval before they can drive onto the European markets, those projects can wait at 24 hours to get approval, to get signed off by the Borders and Customs people. And as a result of that, that the colonisation of all those pathogens is starting to grow and grow and grow. So it means that you couldn't look at East European markets because it might be just too far to get to. With this, he could. So what he wanted was give me a limited exclusivity on porcine, which is pork only. So he got exclusivity for that, but he also wanted to have it for all of his others, because I think he had 14 different abattoirs, but only 8 of them were porcine. So he got a limited exclusivity on 50% of the, owns 50% of the rights to this in porcine. The rights could be sold to all the others in bovine, ovine, avian, which is, your lamb, your beef, your chicken, whatever it is they wanted to sell, and it'll do the same thing. But for them, they wanted it for pork because that was their major product and also their major advantage. So from there, we pitched the leverages, which was market reach, and its exclusivity was for pork in the UK. We were able to get the deal. This guy did this deal in 8 days, and it was millions of dollars per annum that they signed up for. It was quarterly in advance. It was a bulk fee. They knew so much per carcass. They put a price on it, said that's good enough for us. So they knew they could save money and make money. They wanted to lock it in, and they did. So you can do that sort of thing for roll by locking in your leverages early and then rolling out your product accordingly. Okay, next one is getting your funding to cash flow, not to profit. Now, this is Jeff in USA. Jeff had a product which he recognized that there's within the hearing aid industry, 30% of people who buy hearing aids stop wearing them. And the reason why is that they can't get these devices inside their inner ear comfortably. Sometimes our inner ear channel or canal is bent, twisted over age, or it's narrowed down over time, and these become very uncomfortable. So they end up stop wearing it. So he developed a little worm thing that you could push in there and it was fine. And he built the whole receiver and broadcaster and everything else. The problem with all of that is that put him in direct competition to all of his competitors, which are some 40 different brands, but those 40 different brands are owned by just 2 companies worldwide. There's only 2 companies manufacturing these. So what we did is we reinvented it. We said, look, you don't really need to be in the business of hearing aids. What you want to be in is in the business of broadcasting, a comfortable way of communicating what the receiver will give to the person. He agreed on that. So we made 2 universal connectors there that could plug in, retrofit to either of the 2 manufacturers, which covered 40 odd different product lines. And then he was able to say, well, I'm not in the business of making these anymore, which were $320 each, or for a pair, sorry, and he'd have to sell them and be in direct competition to these multinational companies. Instead, he was retrofitting to somebody, and they didn't care about retrofit, and he was only charging $80 a pair. So it changes the game completely for him. So now, to give you some numbers here, I want to just show you that $80 I talked about for this against $320 for the full unit. So what he was looking at is he wanted to get our approach to the total available market of users who had thrown this into a drawer. That's next to impossible because people talk about total available markets, which is worldwide, how many people. You can't ever count on that. You can never calculate that because the amount of cost to market to those people is absolutely incredible. But we had a way. What we decided was he could go to the people who sold them this unit, which is the audiologists. They had a list of customers who bought from them, and they already knew who the people were who didn't come back and get their units rechecked, renewed, or replaced because they just said, no, this is too painful, I don't want to wear it. So as a result of that, they knew who those people were. So it meant that each audiologist could blast out 1 email with a deal, and the deal might be try it before you buy it, and if it works, fine. If it doesn't work in 30 days, send it back to me, and we won't even charge you for it. So you can imagine what that $80 risk is for people who it's already spent $320. They're going to take one on and try it. So now I want to give you an idea of what the market is. So there's in 2024, 22.7 million pairs of these were sold worldwide. Not his units, but the hearing aids packs. 30% is 6.8 million of people who stopped wearing them. Now, if you take 10 years of those people who have stopped wearing them, that's probably about 60 million in the past 10 years that are not being used. And all of those are connectable to their audiologists. So all he had to do was to go to audiologists and say, let me do this deal with you. You can be the distributor. Your suppliers don't care. It's only one little connector at the front, and that gives him the cash flow to then not go into business to go and build a complete unit, but just to make what it is that was he found was what everyone wanted. And as a result of that, he's well into he's getting at his 65 million, but I don't think he'll ever get to that. We're only talking US at the moment. But while he's working on that and supplying these, he's able to now negotiate a deal with both of these suppliers. So one of them, he's going to give one exclusivity and sell the whole thing outright. So that's his exit plan. You must have an exit for you and for your collaborative partners, by the way. If you don't have an exit, people can't get out, they won't get in. That's just something you need to bear in mind. Okay, so let me just keep going now. This one was quite a unique product. I'll talk a little bit about it. David's method is how to build a shed on your own without any equipment, any lifting equipment, any cranes, traction, scaffolding, anything. One person could put up a shed, and it could be a big one. So this is a small one, but David could do sheds which were 25 metres by 400 metres or longer. And all he had to do was, the only restriction for him is, and these were mostly sold to farmers, the restriction was that the truss that is behind here, you can't see it here, needs to be able to be lifted. One end of it needs to be able to lift it up by a foot or so and placed onto this sleeve that he's put on the top of these SHS posts. Once he slides the sleeve down there and locks it on, he puts the truss on both ends, he bolts it on, all the bolt holes are already there. And then at the end of that, when he's built the entire roof on the ground, he connects the pulleys at the top, winches on the outside, and he's maybe got 60, 100 winches. And he walks around this and winches them up 3 inches at a time until he's right to height. When he's at height, he then puts the pins through because the hole's already there, the bolts, sorry. He locks it all up. Then he takes his winches and his pulleys off and he sends them back to the supplier, and he gets a rebate on those based on the condition they're returned in. Pretty easy model. So what it meant was somebody buying a $100,000 shed has to spend $60,000 extra to have it installed with all the crews that turn up, all the lifting equipment, the scaffolding, cranes, you name it. Sometimes they even have to cut a road in to get to it. So to get all their equipment in there. This they didn't need to. They could build the roof on the ground, including solar panels, elevate it, and then do the same for the walls on the ground, and then use the same pulleys to lever them up and then lock them into place underneath the flashing on the outside so they'd be watertight by the time they got up. So he wouldn't even need to put the concrete pad down first. Otherwise, they would have to, and they have to wait 3 weeks for the concrete pad to set so then they can run heavy equipment on there to, with scissor lifts and things like that. So he didn't need to do any of that. Okay, so what did he do? Well, David needed, when he came down to it, first off, he needed $5 million. Well, he didn't. He actually needed $500,000 to get his market established. What he had to spend money on was getting a sales channel established, getting initial products established, getting a demonstration to go to what they call field days in Australia, which is farm agricultural shows. And he knew if he had one set up, which he could build on day one and take down on day 4, people in that show over 4 days would get it, like it, realise that they could save at least 30% on their build, and the farmers would insist on getting it from their shed suppliers. So what we did, we wanted to identify what the non-cash advantages are, and this was quite radical. So when we did our thing, we knew here the cash requirement out of his $500,000 was just $88,000. And that was pretty much his admin fees, the compliance, and the amount for his demonstration units, which was a massive trailer which folded all in. So as a result of all of that, the rest of it was all access to facilities, might be a rental of a plant. He needed access to gantry cranes, forklifts, racking, CNC presses, tin folders. He needed welders, inline welders, and the skills to operate all of those. So, but he didn't need cash. What he did was he got a commercial partner who had all of that, and that represented cash for them that they didn't need to come up with. As a result, someone was getting $500,000 worth of shares for $88,000. It made it well worthwhile. Their leverages were, what we had to do is prove that $88,000 was a good investment. So what we did is, and David flew me to the other side of Australia to do this pitch with them for the first one that he did. And what I did is I asked that prospect to do me a favour, to do me some research before I got there. I said, go back to your last 12 months of business that you didn't get and find out if they went to someone else or they didn't buy, and if it was because of when you quoted it, the price of installation was too high. So they did that. We turned up, we did the pitch. I asked them the question and they said, well, actually, we only went back 6 months and stopped because it just got, at that point, or they did get 3 offers from 2 pitches, but I'll explain that. He was able to give away 50% of the Australian rights, but what he got was $2.8 million worth in the 6 months that they had done that in lost business. $2.8 million against $88,000 worth of investment. So you can see why they jumped at it. So much so that one of their staff on one of these pitches went back to somebody else in the business, and their suppliers, which were the big steel manufacturers, the guy from Sydney in Australia flew to Brisbane and then drove up to Gympie where this guy is on his farm and said, show me what you've got. I've heard about it. And they made an offer as well. So it wasn't an abundance of offer. We had targeted this very carefully. And the most important thing out of this, David gave away 50% of the Australian rights for that, but he owns 100% of the world rights. So you can see just what that's worth. He was quite happy to give away 50%. He's going to be cash flow positive pretty much within 3 months. So, and people were taking deposits on orders. Their suppliers were taking deposit, the joint venture partner, from trade shows, from farming field days. Farmers were saying, how much? Yeah, I want this. I've already got a quote. It's $300,000 to get the shed. I don't want to pay another $100,000 for install. What can you do for me? David said, yeah, no problem. We'll do that. Okay. So the last one now I want to get to is working on micro deals and accelerating those micro deals to get you to the big ones. So what we do is, firstly, when we talk about 10-4-1, we're looking at layers and players in the industry to make sure that we can cover up everything. What you're looking at here is a method of 6 of these little devices in a bag for every door, and you can install doors into homes in 5 minutes instead of 45 minutes, because all this does is click directly to the outside of the frame that the door comes on. When you buy your doors, you can put up, an average home has about 12 doors in it. That includes pantry doors and outside, inside doors, all of these that can all be done from that. Any swing door that has a latch and handle and has to swing automatically or swing without being off center, without locking onto the ground or anything else, needs to be aligned. And the alignment is, in the past, been a series of wedges done by a very skilled carpenter. Now, any old trades assistant can do it because they can just put these on, lock it in, and it's done. So they've taken the install from 45 minutes per door to 5 minutes each. Our target market on those layers and players was OEMs, such as in Australia and New Zealand, and this is an Auckland product. We started with New Zealand, and we use Corinthian doors as the OEM, but there are others, and we're playing them all against each other till Corinthian said yes. We're talking about the retailers of hardware stores where we can bundle 6 of these, and we can supply to the hardware stores with 6 on the hanging hook. They can put it into the stores. Hey, you've got a door to hang. Here's a kit, and it costs you $20, $30, whatever it is. You can set up a door very quickly and without the skills you would otherwise need. And thirdly, they needed the fastener distributors, people who are already supplying to the big box retailers and also door OEMs in bulk. So what we did is we found one of those as well, and we did deals with all 3, and these supplied those 2. So that was pretty easy to do, but took a bit of negotiation and smarts. We had negotiated all of them. That's the one we wanted. When we got that, we got them. Each of them was exclusive to their own demographic, so we only had one in each of them to start with. The retailers ended up expanding, so we're really one door OEM if other door OEMs wanted that, they had to buy from the retailers, and so they paid a bit more than what these guys were selling to the principal one for. And of course, that restricted exclusivity to that one country over one period of time, which was 2 years. So you could say we started at 1 year, they started at 5 years, we ended up in 2 years. So you can, at the expiry of that fastener can go and supply all of the other door OEMs. So pretty easy, but it works. They started small, did one deal at a time, moved on, and got the traction. And that includes the exit, because ultimately these guys will end up buying this out. I can tell that in advance just by the way we set it up. So, and he's been in the program, by the way, for nearly 5 weeks, and we did it all in that time because he was a man on the mission, and he did his 4 weeks learning. He then did his workshop. We planned it all out, and he implemented it within a week and a half. So just goes to show what could be done. So the reality of momentum. We don't know what momentum looks like in most cases, and it's all about conversations with prospective partners, decisions being made, small wins every week, micro deals, cash flow events, and to take you to the next cash flow event, not to take you to profit. And profit and scale ultimately will follow. That's the momentum you need. And if I just show you that, it's not about ideas, patents, or motivation. This is about structuring commercial behavior, your commercial behavior, not promoting game changers, but incremental growth by micro deals to get you to the macro objective. Most inventors, in fact, based on this, aren't failures. They just stall their projects and can't get free. I want you to change that. So if you were to focus on something, I want you to focus on small commercial transactions, micro deals with partners, separate your local from your national, from your global, and start one at a time. Don't focus on any more than one at a time. And then once you've got the first one, you use that cash to repeat your cash flow event, so you're not diluting yourself as you grow. You've got market validation from the first one, and you can share that upwards, and you're reducing your risk and creating more opportunities. And these are all repeatable outcomes if you do it right. So now you want to be able to get to be that 5%. You can understand those 10 elements of what changed 95%ers to 5%ers. Becoming the 5% is all about these things: knowing the sequence that you're going to use to get this done, finding the strategic partners, and we have a process for that, but you can build that. You can see that now with those layers and players. Taking the small steps and focusing only on those, building towards pre-scale, not jumping to it, but building towards it. Mastering the sequence you've got and making sure that the fox who chases many rabbits catches none. You've got to focus on that one rabbit at a time. Momentum becomes a process after that. It's not anything about luck. So what's holding you back right now? The biggest constraint probably isn't money. It's the unknown. Uncertainty stops movement, and confidence creates the movement that you need. Confidence comes from experience and guidance, and having a plan and working to it is going to be everything going forward. So I want to give you a quick reflection here. I want to ask you a question, something honestly. If nothing changes in what you're doing now, where will your project be in 12 months from now? Will you still be adding more features? Will you be waiting for that big break? Or maybe still funding it yourself going forward? Or can you be moving along one project to project to get you to where you need to be, that tipping point? You can understand where that is. Feel free to drop it into the unit, into the chat box, because I'm about to finish now, so we'll go and talk about that with the Q&A. Okay, so what's your turning point? You could become that 5%. It doesn't take much to do it. It's a process understanding, it's structures and sequence, constant guiding, tools and templates, cash generating momentum. So the last question I have for you, what would momentum look like for you? Out of all of those 10 points, which one do you think is going to unleash you and get you going? You need 7 of these, and everyone I've shown you has at least 7, but some of them have 10. So you need to focus on one to get you, and then see if you can do all 10. Which would be the first you need to master? That's what you need to understand now. So we'll chat about that in our Q&A after this. So before we get to Q&A, it would be remiss of me to talk to you about what program we run. I'm not going to do a big sell here, but I can tell you if you want to get into our program and become one of our cohort of 6, we have cohorts. I've got 2 new cohorts starting and I want to fill those, but it's only open to 12 projects. And as a result of that, they're geographic and their timing. If you want to get involved, you have to have a conversation with me. There's no other way to get in. For those of you who already had a conversation, you've watched this and said, yep, I'm ready, you can jump on and book straight into it. Otherwise, you jump on a call with me. And for 30 minutes, it's not a sell. I just want to make sure that there's some certainty for you and certainty for me. There's no point in doing this if you can't get through. And I want to make sure that you've got at least 3 of those points or up to 3 of those points, and I can get you the rest of them to get you cash flow positive. Okay, so that's it. What I'll do now is stop the recording once I jump out of this, so we can do a Q&A. I don't want to record the Q&A because it's got you'll be able to be more free to ask questions if you wanted to. My apologies for running over time. I did my best, but I didn't want to talk too fast. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then I'm going to stop my recording.